Good afternoon from Hamburg, Germany. My name is Ilan Alon, and I'm a professor of international business and a fellow at Harvard University. Today we have a distinguished guest, Dr. Andreas Heinecke, who is the founder of DSC, Dialogue in Social Enterprises, and DID, Dialogue in the Dark. We are in the headquarters in Hamburg, and we have a few questions for you. One of the first question is, how did you get started with this program, and what made you do Dialogue in the Dark and Dialogue in Social Enterprises?
Right. Well, there's also a short story and a long story. And the short story started in 1928, actually. It was a year when my parents were born. And my mother was born in Poland, part of a Jewish family. And my father was born in Germany as part of a Nazi family. And you can imagine this combination, of course, raised some curiosity, so to say, when I became, let's say, more old, and I tried to understand, first of all, how did they click, how did this happen, that from the two different angles they were able, I think, to meet and to love each other. And secondly, of course, what drives me was to understand the technique, the methodology of exclusion, which leads to extermination. So from 13 on until 30, I was exclusively focused to understand this topic, what happened in World War II, and how it was possible to kill 6 million people in an industrial way. So this was my first sediment. And when I finished my studies, I started working for a radio station, and one day I was asked by my director if I can imagine a work training for a guy who had a car accident and lost his eyesight. And I had no understanding about blind people, about disability. I was just, oh my goodness, 28 years, car accident, no eyesight, this is not a valuable life. And I was absolutely, had this awkwardness, and I had no understanding how I'm going to communicate with this guy who has no eyesight. And I met him for the first time, and I was really blown away about his optimism, about his way, I think, to cope with the situation, about his personality. And after this first interview, I was really shocked and felt ashamed, embarrassed about myself, because when I judged so quickly with my education, my family history, that being blind is not a valuable life, how others may judge. And this was for me a wake-up call that, well, I have to do something. I have to really do something. That this sort of, let's say, avoidance, this sort of, let's say, very quick judgments has to be overcome. And I made my PhD in Eastern Judaism, and then when you study Eastern Judaism, I think you cannot miss Martin Buber. And Martin Buber said one very important quote, that the only way to learn is by encounter. And the Principles of Dialogue, one of his maybe famous books. And then I said, well, I need to translate, I think, Buber's philosophy into a real life experience. And then, of course, when you are, let's say, coping and talking and being with blind people on a daily basis, of course, you understand that their, let's say, assets are in the non-vision. And then it was somehow very obvious to close the light and, I think, to make a whole swap. And this first idea came up in '88, now 25 years ago, when I made the first, let's say, darkroom experiment. When I was in this darkroom 25 years ago, a long time, it was for me very clear, that's it, this I have to do. And so it was about the beginning.
So tell us a little bit more about your beginning. You started in 1988. Did you start by yourself? Did you have partners? How did you get started?
Well, I think as I told you, I was working for a radio station. I was asked how to train this one blind guy, and I did it for 2 years, so from '85 until '87. And then I had in mind, I think, to replicate this work training I did for this one guy and to roll it out, to replicate it for other radio stations in Germany. And then I applied for a grant from the Ministry for Social Welfare and Labor. And they said, listen, wonderful idea, but I think you need to have an institution. Because we are in Germany, not maybe in the US, so entrepreneurship is a difficulty in Germany, not an opportunity. And then I was hired by a Foundation for the Blind, and I worked there. But again, I think for me the most important issue was how I can change mindset. And so for 5-6 years, I worked for the Foundation for the Blind. But when I came up with the idea in '88, and I was an employee of the foundation, listen, we have to do something which, how to say, open up the mind, which, how to say, breaks down mental barriers. They were completely shocked that it will never work, blind people cannot do it, who will come, it's impossible to do it. So I was confronted from day one, I think, I was treated very badly, in fact, because people think I'm too weird and it's just bullshit. But this is, I think, maybe the first approval, or you should take it as a confirmation when you are somehow seen as somebody who does foolish things. It's the first good indication that you are on the right track. And then I said, listen, but I want to do it. I said, okay, do it. But I think we are not, as a foundation, will not cover anything. So you do it by your own. So I opened my wallet and had to pay my stuff by my own in the beginning. But little by little it grew. And then the conflicts within the foundation were too big and was too much challenging for me. So I said, one day I said, listen, I'm out. And this was in 95. And in 95, I had just the idea, okay, now I will, let's say, this very, very infant state dialogue in the dark, which was in these days maybe showcased maybe 10, 15 times in this early stage. I want to take it and I want to move it forward. But then, of course, the real challenge started because I had no money. I had nobody, in fact, who was supporting me. And I had just, how to say, the idea and the belief, in fact, that this can fly. But it took me quite a while, I think, to survive. It was very hard. The beginning was very, very tough.
So from 1988 to 1995, you were working within an institutional context.
Yes.
And from 1995, you broke out as an entrepreneur, as a social entrepreneur.
Yes.
Can you explain what is social entrepreneurship for you? What does that mean for you?
Well, I think when I started, I had no idea about social entrepreneurship, so the notion was completely unknown. Yeah, so I was then elected in 2005 as the first Ashoka Fellow, but I had no idea what social entrepreneurship means, because for me it was more, let's say, a human rights thing. I think I really would like, I'm not completely focused on blindness. I'm not a social worker, I'm not a blind worker. And for me, it was I could not accept that, and I felt it just as a huge, let's say, injustice that blind people are treated unequally because out of their conditions. So this was, how to say, my main motivation to take a position and to say, listen, we have to reflect, we have to reconsider our let's say, our perspective towards blindness and towards people who are different. So this was my main driver. I didn't want to simulate blindness. It was just very helpful and very easy. But I think the dialogue in the dark stands for more than just for, let's say, giving an experience what means to be blind and give employment for blind people. It was, for me, it was more. And then of course it was clear I need money, but where the money comes from. And it was maybe then my first entrepreneurial task, I think, to look for how I can generate some income. And in Germany, where we are quite pampered by the state service, so we have a lot of governmental, let's say, funding for things which seems to be not commercial and who are have a very, very social angle. And so I looked for funding, but okay, nobody wants to fund it, because what do they fund? It is a Luna Park thing? Is it just making fun out of darkness, out of blindness? Do I, let's say, mistreat blind people? Do I, let's say, emphasize a completely wrong image because only a few blind people have this completely dark or black side? The majority has some blurry eyesight or whatever. So it would be a very, very, let's say, even dangerous simplification to say, well, darkness means blindness. So I had to face so many, let's say, difficulties in order to convince them that it took me, a long time until I could really raise funds to set up this here. And in fact, it started in 1992 when we were invited here next door to a very small presentation of Dialogue in the Dark, I think for 2 weeks here next door in a part of an event of the city. And the guy who was in these days responsible for a social fund told me, listen, this sounds interesting, we should continue talking, And when somebody tells me, sounds interesting, we should continue talking, this is for me like a signed contract. So this was for me done that Hamburg now will become the city. And for 7-8 years, I really chased him. I really chased this guy, poor guy, and I really bombarded him and tried to meet him and tried to follow up. I said, listen, we need to let it happen. And he was maybe not encouraged enough to say, come on, get out here. He was all the time, yes, maybe, but. And for 7-8 years, after a while, he was so fed up and he gave me 1 million because it was somehow he wanted to be liberated because I would pursue him now for the next 20 years. So he was maybe clever enough to understand it's gives them this guy money and that's it. So he gave me 1 million to build this institution here.
And this was in
2000. And so from 1992 until 2000, it was my main objective, I think, to find some seed money. And in these days, the only way to get seed money is from the state, because it was in Germany, in other countries it's different, but this was the way to do. And then they gave me the 1 million, and it was planned to be for 3 years, and as a work employment program for unemployed disabled people. This was somehow the legal frame, the umbrella, exactly. And honestly speaking, nobody believed, maybe except me, that this is gonna fly. And but then luckily I think it's working, and it worked very well. But then of course we had to face another conflict, that we were overperforming, because when you have some state funding, you have to fulfill certain regulations, and one regulation was of course that we had only very few income. But we had, of course, much more income. Of course, we had much more expenses. But this was somehow, let's say, conflicting with the state funding. And so we had a lot of argumentation again, why and this and that. So the state funding was conflicting with the entrepreneurship idea. And so in a moment I said, listen, guys, I'm out. So we cut the ties with the state, and then I think now for how many years? Maybe 8 years, 9 years now, we are, let's say, without any funding.
So when did you start becoming profitable?
I'm still trying. Yes. Okay. We are making no loss. I think if we are not making loss, I think this is how to say this is a huge success. But the question is, of course, what does profit means, and how do you count it now? Is cash and pennies and cents or whatever, or do you see a social profit?
Well, let me rephrase it. When did you start breaking even?
Yeah, well, when did I start breaking even? I think, luckily, especially this unit here in Hamburg worked pretty well, because there were many circumstances. First of all, the team is great. This is important. You need a really very committed team. This was one. The location is very how to say, well located, very good location. And I think the running costs were quite affordable, because I think this was a storehouse here, and we renovated it, so we don't have now to pay a high lease. So these were some circumstances which were helpful. That means this company, from the first day on, was somehow break even. But of course we have other operations which are not lucky, have not these lucky, let's say, circumstances. And so we have to co-finance, or we have to, let's say, roll up sleeves again and have to find additional funding. So it's all the time, let's say, juggling.
So one of the challenges, I guess, of a social business or social enterprise is that you have to balance profits on the one hand with social change on the other hand. How do you feel you balance these two sort of competing objectives?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it's competing. I see it as a complementary. Yes, and of course, but it's a twist. It's clear. And in fact, money is a means to an end. That means we need money, of course, I think, to run our businesses, but I think it's not, let's say, that the main purpose is not to maximize profit. So if as I said, if we don't make loss, I think we are on the happy side. And believe me, I think we need 5 million euro a year, I think, to run all the different operations. And it's a lot of money, I think, for a very small, middle-sized company which has a global outreach and has 2 operations in Germany. So it's all the time sweating blood, I think, to let it work, and that it's not dying, or it's not, let's say, collapsing. And the twist has to be managed, I think, can only manage through leadership. That means you have to be very, very clear as a leader that the main objective is to accomplish a mission, and that money is just, how to say, needed, but has no meaning itself. That means it has to be very, very clear for everybody who wants to join, wants to work with us, that we are a mission-driven company. Of course, we are not, let's say, state pampered. We don't have donations, so we have to earn our money. But I think, again, when at the end of the day, I think we have somehow a balanced sheet, then we succeeded. Of course, if we do profit, then the money has to be returned to the company. So that means there are some ethical standards in place. For me, for instance, it's very important that we have transparency in terms of what are the wages about. And I'm, as a top guy, don't want to earn more than the double of my lowest guy.
Okay.
That means there are some standards in place, and
social equity.
Social equity, yes. I think if you are, let's say, if you are taking this track, I think then you cannot have all the social glory, and you are the hero, and you are so wonderful. And on the other side, I think I have a, let's say, a life like a banker. So there must be you need, I think, to cope with it. And I think it's just for me it's very important. That means, of course, we are trying hard, I think, to gain financial excellence, and of course we try, I think, to understand where the money is going, where the money can come, what are our strategies. So we are, of course, a normal, ordinary company. But again, me as a main shareholder, I don't take anything, out of it, and the profit has to stay in the company. And of course, only in emergencies, I try, I think, to take money from one company, I think, to shuffle it to the other one, which is all the time very complicated because everybody has a certain ownership.
Sure.
But you can only handle it, I think, with some very, very clear rules on one side, and secondly, with high transparency. And I think it's maybe the most important, let's say, ways to manage this twist.
Yeah. You mentioned that you're a mission-driven organization. What is your mission? What are your objectives? And how do you know you've reached those objectives?
Yeah, well, we are just reframing the mission because after 5-6 years we have to sharpen it again because there is, of course, a certain drive, not in the essence, but maybe we should set a different focus. And the mission, we have two, let's say, goals to accomplish. One goal is, of course, employment for people who usually don't have easy access to the labor market. Of course, now for Dialogue in the Dark, of course, primarily blind people, but for Dialogue in the Silence, deaf people, Dialogue with time, people who are above 70 years old, so people who don't have easy access to and disabled or marginalized. Yes, I want to provide work. But maybe more importantly, we want to change the mindset towards otherness. Yeah. That means we want to close this gap. We want to overcome this hurdle in open discussion, open exchange, open encounter between so-called, let's say, disabled and maybe so-called non-disabled people. So we are somehow brainwashers. We really try, I think, to influence people to think different and not to, let's say, be trapped by these assumptions that now disabled people are less value, they are weak, they are sick or whatever. We want to open up, let's say, an open communication among different, let's say, stakeholders. And if you ask me how do I know that we accomplish, of course, I think we do a lot of analysis. So we having a real, I wouldn't say department, but we have some people in our office who really try to understand what's up. So we do analyze, of course, our guest book. We do analyze our, let's say, the visitors' reactions. Of course, we reflect how we are represented in the press, in the media. We, of course, we look for the motivation of people who wants to partner, to team up with us. These are the right guys, or maybe they have a hidden agenda. So we have, of course, we have minimum standards in place, which has to be guaranteed. We have a reporting standard in place. So especially when you open up internationally and they have guys in China and in Africa and in Argentina and US, I don't know where. Of course, the good news is they are very willing, I think, to move this forward. And they have, of course, a common understanding. But on the other side, they have, of course, a right to keep an ownership. And the bad news is people think, and they have, of course, a different understanding of what needs to be done and how it would be done. So a lot of effort needs to be done to have a common value set and to assure that we are on the same picture. So
you mentioned dialogue in the silence, the dialogue with time. When did you come up with the idea of dialogue and social enterprises to include these other concepts?
Well, I told you about my hero, Martin Buber, The Only Way to Learn is by Encounter. And in fact, when I made Dialogue in the Dark, I think it was somehow working. And then one day I had an interview, somebody called me and said, well, I'm the interpreter, sign language interpreter of a lady who is deaf and she wants to meet you. I said, okay, why not? I have no reason not to meet you, so I don't know what to do, but okay, let's get started. And she came as an interpreter and she spoke sign language, and I cannot speak sign language, I couldn't speak sign language. And suddenly she was laughing, and I said, what's happening? Why are you laughing? To have a spaghetti here? Because it was really not on purpose.
Out of context.
And there was no, And then she said, no, but may I ask you a question? Yes, of course. And are you coming from Freiburg? And Freiburg is a city in southwest Germany. And I said, no, I'm not coming from Freiburg, I'm coming from Baden-Baden. This is a city next door, so to say, very close. I said, well, how do you know where I'm coming from, And he said, yes, I have a lip figuration which identifies very clearly from which, let's say, region you are.
Amazing.
And I was really blown away. I said, wow, amazing. I'm not part of a folkloristic group, and my dialogue is not so strong. And so I was really amazed, and then I started learning about deaf and sign language. I made a lot of stuff, I think, to really understand the deaf culture. Then, of course, it was a moment, I think, now to understand how we can make up a new exhibition, how we can, use our learnings from Dialogue in the Dark and translate it into another context. And it took another maybe 10 years, I think, to develop it and to make trial and error and to find the money and this and that. But then at the end, we made it. And this is another.
So when did you start with the Dialogue in the Silence?
Well, I think for me the beginning is all the time when you have this initial kick.
Sure.
And this was I think the first real dialogue in silence was, I think, in 2006, if I remember right. So not such a long time ago.
So maybe about 6 years after you opened this location.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. We had some smaller pieces, smaller, more tests. But then in 2006, the first time, it was in Paris with Anna, my wife, who was very active in these days. And then we made it in 2006, and in 96, I guess, I started to think about and to come into deaf. To learn sign language is something you need to dive very deep, otherwise you don't have a voice.
And with age?
Pardon me?
And the dialogue with age?
The dialogue with time, again, well, I think we are all part of this life journey. I think everybody should start very quickly, I think, to reflect what does it mean, I think, to getting old. And now in fact, the aging topic is for me deeply embedded from my early days. So when I was 22 years, maybe 23 or 24, I started really thinking about what does it mean to get old. And I behaved as a very, very old man. In fact, I was dressed like a very, very old guy. I behaved like a very, very old guy. I was absolutely, copying seniors. And the good news is when you start, behaving like an old guy, of course in the beginning you have a lot of, comments. What, you are 30, I thought you are 60, and now actually I'm almost 60. A lot of people say, oh, you're 30. You're 30, exactly. So you
haven't changed.
You haven't changed, okay, this is how to say it, that's the good news. No, I was very, very deeply moved by elderly people. I have the chance to meet really great people who were pretty old. So this was somehow very, very deeply rooted to try. And then our Israeli friend Gil from Rollins came along and said, listen, now I have funding, let's do the dialogue with time. So there was somehow, all the time it was somehow accompanying us. And then when the Israeli guys found the money, so we made, and we had 3 years, I think, to work with a committee and all the experts and the gerontologists and the psychologists and the senior organizations. Then again, the work starts.
How did you start thinking about franchising? When did you, and why did you start thinking about franchising?
Yeah, well, we have been in 1990 in Frankfurt in an art center. And there were different performances, and we were one of the program. And then there was a dancer from Paris, and she in fact conveyed the news to another producer that somebody in Germany is doing something really strange with darkness and blind and so on and so on. And then the guy called me and said, listen, I'm running an arts festival in Paris, would you like to come? But of course, Paris is all time worthy, I think, to travel. Why not to go to Paris and to develop in the dark there? But he said, listen, I think I had no idea how to do it. And I said, yes, we have a theater and we have people. Of course, we need French-speaking people. So I said, yes, okay, but we can come and we can share our learnings. So that's it. So we came to Paris and we explained, listen, you have to darken here, you have to make it here, and this set can be here. And of course, we can give some advice to the blind guys how to be a tour guide. And little by little, in fact, I think something was developed which was meant to be franchise. But for me, when the first time somebody told me about franchise, I thought about French fries because I have no skills. I'm not an economist. I never studied management. I'm a philosopher by education, and whatever it means. And that means that little by little we learned, and then of course other people from Canada came or from Italy came, and little by little we understood, well, we have to prepare somehow a document, we have to, let's say, we have to open up our learnings, we have to define certain standards, and little by little I think it grew. But I think the core was all the time that we were very, very picky when the label comes up. So the brand was very important. That means we were absolutely, there was no discussion about that we can do it, I don't know what, walking in the dark or singing in the dark or whatever. So it was all the time dialogue in the dark, and we understood we have to translate very quickly. So it was in France, it became then Dialogue dans la Noir, in Spain it became Dialogue en la Oscuridad, and so on and so on. So we all the time translate very quickly the name and the brand, and the charm is that it works in every language. So all the time the two keywords, dialogue and dark. And then little by little, I think we developed certain expertise, and then we trained people who were able to convey what it's about, and so little by little, I think it grew, and now, in fact, we have some standards in place, and now we can disseminate.
So, if I understand you correctly, the going international is what has led you to start thinking about franchising, replication.
Yes, of course.
And standardization.
Yes.
How do you ensure? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how many countries you're in and what you do. But my question is, how do you ensure that the same standards are followed? That there is indeed a replication of what you're doing here in Hamburg, elsewhere?
Well, a big debate. Because I think even the concept sounds so easy, dark and blind, and that's it. There are a lot of different understandings. And let's talk about the wages, for instance. We said, okay, everybody who is working for us need to be paid. This was one of our, let's say, our rules. So now, for instance, I flew to Brazil, Sao Paulo, and we had a dinner with our investors, and we were in a Japanese restaurant, sitting on a hotel, 28th floor, Japanese food, nice ambience, and I asked him, how much did you pay? $200. Okay, well, this is the same what we would pay in Hamburg for people to have a dinner like this. Okay, next day we had a discussion, and we were discussing how much we're gonna pay now for the blind people, the tour guides, and they work 6 days the week in Brazil, and they have at least 10 hours working hours, so long days. And I said, okay, $200. What, $200? Yesterday we went to the Japanese restaurant and we paid €200, and now you want to offer you're kidding, for a 24 days job on a monthly basis with all this hard job to do, $200? And yes, this is how to say this is a common standard. So we had to understand and we had to respect it. There was no way. And I asked very a lot of people, because they have family support systems, they have completely different ways, I think, to live, and $200, I think, is in Brazil in these days was quite fair. But of course, for us as a European guy, having no understanding how you can live with €200 or $200 was quite challenging. So there's all the time, let's say, somehow a conflict. So what we need to accept out of the local, let's say, conditions, on site. And it's of course culture, it's about payment, it's about, again, how do people handle stuff. You know, I think for us it's unbearable when I see that 20 people sitting in a booth of I don't know what, 10 square meters. In China it might be completely usual. So that means I every time need to learn and have to respect, I think, the local conditions. And of course, it's given that, of course, the concept is untouchable. I think it's not semi-dark, or it's not, how to say, or not blindfolded. I think the rooms have to be very, very pitch dark. And of course, the only people we employ within the mediation have to be visually impaired or blind people. But again, I think it's not only about the setting and the employees, the employees, the working force. It is much more maybe the surrounding, how we can guarantee it. It starts with the communication. So what do I emphasize? It's an exhibition about the blind. It's an exhibition about to learn to see. It's an exhibition to discover the unseen. It's an exhibition about I don't know what, about the senses. There are so many ways to see. And then, of course, the matter is, of course, then the pricing. When we are in New York City, the guys charge a hell of money. So this is too much expensive, too expensive. Yeah, but the New York City, blah, blah, blah. If you go to a musical, you have to pay the double. So there's all the time a lot of, let's say, argumentations. And security is, of course, an issue. For me, it's safe when it's like this. In New York City, of course, it's completely impossible, I think, to set our standards, because they would be seen as completely underperforming. So we have, of course, much higher standards. When I'm going to Albania, of course, I say, okay, well, you can do whatever you want. So it means a completely a huge variety of different, let's say, conditions. And we have to learn, I think, to respect cultural differences on one side, to be open, to respect ownership is very important, that all these guys are not doing it for money, they're doing it for social missions, social purpose. That means we have to believe them that they don't have a hidden agenda. And then, of course, then we have to, be very, very empathetic in order to convey our standards. But we cannot now assume that when you're going to another country, when you're going to Africa or South America or whatever, and you come with a German square head and say, this has to be like this, that is working. It has to be all the time a very flexible system that we need to understand what are the common senses. What do we need to respect out of the cultural, let's say gap or difference, however. And what is, non-negotiable, which, absolutely, which is there's no way to do it.
Today you are in 38 countries?
Well, we have been in 38 countries so far, and now in these days we have 24 exhibitions in 20 countries, I don't remember why.
24 exhibitions in 38 countries, that's very impressive. I'm curious how, you started in France by accident.
Yeah, by accident.
I'm curious, how is it that you select where it is that you want to go?
Yeah, well, we don't have any marketing department or no sales department, so we are not proactive. We're not saying, okay, now I have to go to China, I have to go here and there. There's no marketing plan.
You're reactive.
We are reactive, and this is maybe the first criteria when you are short in staff, that you cannot run away and do here and there. So the first filter is that we are not, proactive, we are reactive. So we are waiting, somebody is coming. And then when somebody is coming, we have per week, I would say maybe 3 to 5 requests from all over. So they're coming. Mainly word to mouth or personal experience or media or website, of course. And then they're coming, they're dropping, a line, so listen, we are interested, and how does it mean? Can we bring it now to I don't know what? Of course you can bring it, but then we give them all the reasons not to do it. So we are very, very...
What's the reasons not to do it?
It's the complexity, I think the financial weakness. When you start doing, I want to do a document, okay, great idea, but suddenly you have a responsibility. It's not like having a bit of fun in the dark. I think you suddenly employ 30, 40 blind people. And then I can say, okay, guys, it's over, light on, and that's it. You take a responsibility. You have to be very, very serious about what are you doing. This is one. Secondly, I think it's not running automatically. You just cannot go to, I don't know what's Salvador de Bahia, for instance. We were just been in a shopping mall. The guys completely underestimated, I think, the need of a very, very clear marketing campaign. So we were somehow in a shopping center, great, fantastic, and huge investment, and everything was right. And then nobody came. Why? Because communication was not working. They were so attracted by their own experience that they completely ignored the importance that people need to be informed about it. And then, of course, it was a little bit a disaster because when we were there, everything was shiny and great, but then nobody came because communication was lacking. So we have to be very, very clear. It's a 24/7 job. It's not doing mal easy something for the blind or doing in the dark, and this is funny. No, it's a very, very demanding job. Secondly, I think when you think about, let's say, a long-term permanent exhibition, temporary is different. And then you build a center. So it needs an investment of $500,000 or euro, depends. This is how to say the startup capital we need. And this is, of course, another filter. And then when you succeed to build it and to run it, and it's running on a daily basis, then, of course, the real challenge starts. I think now to keep the level. How now here running for 13 years, believe me, I think to keep a certain standard, in the mediation, in the operation, it is a huge effort to run it properly. And of course, then you have a team maybe of 30 or 40 blind people. Usually they have no work experience. And of course, in the beginning, everybody is so thankful and grateful. Wow, I have a job now, fantastic, and it's so much fun. But after 5 years, they listen, what I'm doing here, you know. So they become divas. They become very, very complicated. And then you are relying on me. So we have now here in Hamburg, we have a union. We have really a very, very strong discussion every day, more or less. What are we doing? We have to argue, no problem. But I think the organization is changing. And so that means we have to absolutely to cope with daily challenges, not only financially, in terms of how to operate, how to manage it. We have, of course, a daily challenge in how to communicate it and how to keep our, let's say, our business on a certain level. And not, I think, to lay back and be satisfied with our success. I think it's a daily effort.
So you get 3 to 5 requests a week. That's very impressive. How do you screen? How do you decide who's the right one? Who's the person who is going to carry the torch for Dialogue in the Dark?
Well, firstly, of course, we tell them very, very quickly the framework. They need to understand what it is in depth, and not to be attracted by the charm of the concept or by a personal, let's say, experience. Being confronted with limits, and to have somehow an eye-opening experience. This is not enough, but it's important. The emotional sediment is very important. So we need to understand what is really what drives people, I think, now to jump on the dark and to bring it now to their countries or to their cities. This we need to understand. We need to understand the motivation. And this, of course, takes time, I think, to really to reflect. And then, of course, after we somehow are the same, let's say we share the same values. But again, sharing values is nice, but there are different understandings what values stands for. Now again, the cultural differences and. And then, of course, the professional, let's say, requirements are quite easy to measure. So when you give him a business plan or somebody delivers a business plan and you say, this will never fly, you cannot assume that you have 1,000 people a day. Maybe you should, let's say, lower your expectations. And so we have to really to understand what is the motivation, first of all, why people want to do it. Then we need a certain trust in people. We need to understand really, do they really understand who they are? And then certainly, of course, all the professional requirements need to be in place. I mean, there must be some expertise, some experiences to operate a complex business is needed. But we have, of course, different, let's say, different customer groups. On one side, we have private investors, and it's what I just said might be the one. Yeah, this what I just said. I think might be the most relevant, let's say, components we just shared. That means trust and professionalism, and of course, what is a drive. But when you talk to institutions, it's of course different. That means they are not people. We have, of course, corporates, they are some customers, and they are just booking us, and we are doing it. We don't grill people from the corporate side why you want to do it. We have universities, it's the same, it's institutions. We have to make a distinction between people who have somehow an own agenda, and there we really need to understand what does it mean, why they are doing what they are doing, or why they are, let's say, expecting things to do with us. And secondly, of course, if it's institutions, then we need to understand the institutional frame. And of course, when we have a booking for a workshop, of course, we don't ask psychological questions. We are very happy, and then we deliver. So it's another, let's say, another level.
So franchising is about a system of rights and responsibilities, right?
Yes.
So there's a give and take.
Yes.
What is the give and take for DID?
Yes. Well, I think firstly, of course, when somebody starts, the value proposition is quite high, because I think we are really opening our treasure box, and we share all the knowledge, and of course we give contacts, and so I would say for the first year, it is quite the value proposition is quite high. But then I think due to the business and our own understanding about the business, how we're going to do it, because we want to have a global reach out, we want to expand. Of course, we cannot now, let's say, being focused on one hub, let's say, exclusively, and to give them every week somehow an update, or I don't know what. And this is, of course, a challenge because we are charging a license payment. And, of course, after 12 years, the guys maybe on ground know much better how to operate than we, sitting here in this nice office and looking around. So it means we have to find, let's say, again, a base for trust, that those guys have no wrong assumptions, that we are having a party time while they are working very hard, and they pay us every month a certain license payment. Again, transparency is very important. We have, of course, we use all the communication channels. So it means we have we have a weekly digest. We have a newsletter, of course. We are sharing all what we do in terms of research. We are sharing. We deliver contacts on site. We try, I think, to generate business. We set up a franchise, a fund where 10% of our franchise of our license payments are putting into a fund, which we don't manage. The others have to manage, but that's only for everybody. That means there must be somebody comes back to the community. We have an international meeting where we invite people, so we really try harder, I think, to build a certain community. But believe me, it's very, very hard, because everybody is so much fighting on a daily basis, and you have your ownership thing, and you have to guarantee that this is going to work. That I think the space, the openness now, I think, to think about international expansion and the global brand is not at all, let's say, has no big, let's say, value for you as a daily guy who's running and have to manage all this stuff I just tried to share with you. It's a challenge. And I don't know yet whether I think franchise is the best model. Until now, we didn't find a better model, but I think it has limits. Has really, really limits.
So what are the limits?
The limits, for instance, is to respect, to find them, let's say, a balance between the local ownership and, let's say, the global outreach. This is somehow, which is really, really complicated. Then, of course, how we are showing, let's say, consistent and long-term value proposition. So what is why people should pay us a certain license payment in year 20 or year 15 or whatever. This needs to be discussed. So it means our deliverables are, how to say, compared, I think, to what the people are asked to pay, is not in an equation. So this needs to be done. And of course, how we guarantee our minimum standards. So we don't have a franchise police. We are not going there and checking whether it's like this and the labor conditions and so on and so on. So, but we, of course, we have assessments, but these are self-assessments. So we try to understand really how are the, let's say, the conditions on site. Of course, we have, how to say, let's say, A1 exhibition. Maybe we have C4 exhibitions out of many, many reasons. And how we can, how to say, communicate now to the, let's say, to the broader public, global public, if I may say so, that is the same, let's say, the same ideas, the same core value. Because I think from somebody from outside who is visiting here logo in La Oscuridad in Argentina might not see any connections to somebody in Tokyo. So how we can somehow convey our ambition to be a global brand on one side, but respecting that everybody runs his own small shop in a certain way. And we tried with exchange programs. We have this international meeting where we're coming together, and we really try, I think, to deliver. But of course, it's a conflict because the international office is quite small, and there are only 14 people. That means on one side we, of course, spend a lot of energy, I think, to bring up new exhibitions. Now we have 2 new productions in Istanbul in Essence, and now a team is going, 5 people going there, 5 people are going there, and I'm alone in the office, so to say. And so I cannot take care of the needs of somebody who's running now 10 years in the dark. So, and then of course we could grow. We could say, okay, now we have 10 people more, and we have maybe somehow some key account manager, but then again, who's gonna pay it? Because I think that the business is weak, especially in our, let's say, sector. Because if let's say the income is not high enough, and the guy calls, listen, I cannot pay the license payment. It's like bad luck for you, but you have to pay. And so yes, but shall I now fire 5 blind people because you need your license payment? You are trapped all the time. That means again, and that's why I think franchise is not the right term. I will tell you that, for instance, I think 5-6 years back, I was so sure that we have to build a global brand. Brand recognition is very important. Now we have so many different brands, so there's dialogue in the dark, dialogue in Oscuridad, dialogue in Mörkret, everybody has a different layout, and so on and so on. And I said, hey guys, good news, now we are working on a global brand. This will help us to find all the big sponsors because they need a global brand recognition, and then it will just easy going, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, okay, well, we made one international meeting, we made a workshop, and we tried to work out what does it mean to have a global brand, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, it was clear, no way. There is no way, I think, to really to create a global brand.
Why?
Why? Because, again, ownership. But when you have a social enterprise, I think the emotional attachment is the most important thing. You are doing it for your own. You need an emotional attachment, and you are creating something. You're creating something in your world, in your culture, and this cannot be no mainstream. And then I said, okay, well, thank you so much. So I want to become McDark, and it was dead. No more McDark. And then I wanted to make franchise, and I said franchise is dead. That's not working. What we need is franchise.
Franchise, very interesting.
Everything is related on human. Everything is based on human relations, and this is of course another conflict when you have now 50 operations running. How are you gonna, let's say, please people who wants to meet me? I'm traveling constantly.
Sure, yeah.
And I need to travel, and I like to travel. But again, I think now we have 24 operations, and now people are saying, yeah, when you coming to Taiwan, I have to go to Kuala Lumpur, and I was next door, but you can come. It's not about me.
You need to replicate yourself, right?
It's again another let's say bottleneck. That means how I can, let's say, guarantee a certain let's say recognition. Yeah, of course. I think I'm definitely I'm completely innocent that people are doing it. So of course they want to team up in a certain way, and they want to, how to say. Maybe I wouldn't say replicate, but I think you are somehow a role model for lots of people.
Of course.
And then when you have now 50 operations in the same day, it cannot be everywhere. That means you are ignoring people, and this of course they felt abandoned, and then the emotional, let's say, bonds are getting loose, and then you have another conflict.
Right.
Don't underestimate the human factor in social franchise.
Yeah.
It's not about money, it's about human relations. Need to be managed.
Do you have a standard franchise contract with standard fees, standard royalties?
Yes, I think we have, of course.
And standard time period, right?
I think we definitely upgraded our whole business processes in terms of legal affairs. So we have pro bono services from Hogan Lovells, for instance, an international law firm who gave us, in every country on earth, we have a Hogan Lovells guy, and they help us, I think, to adapt it to the local, let's say, legislation, all that stuff. This is clear. So this we did, and of course in the beginning our contracts were maybe 2 pages. Now we have 40 40 pages. And this is how to say, the lawyers, before we have a full-time lawyer in our team. Before it worked out without them. Now suddenly we need even the second one. So they are creating work. Don't ask me how.
For themselves, right?
I have no idea how it's working. But of course, it gives us a certain, let's say, professional appearance.
Sure.
And we have now 40 pages contract. But again, you are from China very well. In China, a contract with 40 pages is how to say a reason to stop.
Right.
Because everything is based on liberty, on creativity, on progress, and we are coming from British law. Everything, every comma needs to be approved, and you try to limit, especially this, let's say, this free space. Coming to China, people say, "Listen, it's bullshit. We need space," and then you start again to argue. So difficult. But coming back to the royalties. Okay, we have companies who are, let's say, super successful on the stock market, and we have NGOs who are in the midst of nowhere. Sure. And of course, you cannot say, hey, Goldman Sachs or whatever, you are paying the same amount as an NGO in the bush. And it means we have to understand what the partner can really, let's say, afford. So we have to again negotiate. So we have from €1 per month to €5,000 a month.
Okay, so fixed fee, not royalties based on percentage.
Well, no, we have different models. So in Israel, for instance, we have a share, we have a percentage. In China, we have a share. There's a cap, of course, and for others we have a fixed fee. So there are different models in place.
But this gets to the point of fairness, right? I mean, franchisees get together, they talk to each other.
Yeah,
I mean, doesn't that create potential for conflict among themselves and with you, and trust and transparency?
Again, I think this is a huge challenge. People have their own agendas, and it's absolutely fair. And of course, if I'm now charged to one guy 1,000, another guy 2,000, and they are somehow in the same league, there is a bitter feeling at the end. Yeah, again, and then we can only argue, and we can only, try to give an honest, let's say, report about our reality, our financial status, and that our main mission as Laudala Social Enterprise is, I think, to bring it up, and that at the final end, it will help, I think, to let's say, to give more reputation to the local sites when they can refer that we are now in 50 countries or whatever. But it's a long track. It's not given. Again, franchise, open discussion, transparency, being authentic, not having hidden agendas, not lying, not pretending, not cheating, basic business rules.
What is the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Scale. That means we can be considered as somebody who succeeded to scale, but it's very, very low scale in my understanding. So I think the growth progress is much too slow, because the business process is not quick enough. I think it's all about money collection, it's about all building it, and so on and so on and so on. That means the biggest, let's say, challenge is how we can speed on in terms of scale. Scale
within any one outfit, or scale in terms of just the distribution?
Now we have maybe 700,000, 800,000 people per year, which is okay, not bad.
Amazing. Sure.
Amazing. I don't know, but we need 80 million. This is how to say. We have to become mainstream. We have to become a mainstream educational tool. And now we're talking, for instance, with the national schools. They have 3,000 national schools. So the goal is that we are becoming part of the curriculum, that all the students, all the kids from the national schools have this experience as a dialogue week. This is scale. Or now we want to go to developing markets, to post-conflict zones, to war zones, because this is an important tool for trust building, for open up people's mind towards other people, maybe enemies, or people coming from a different, let's say, from a different community. But again, there is no cash, there is no money, there is no middle class. When you go to Syria or now in Rwanda, quite frequently there is no middle class. They even not have a cinema. So how can, let's say, generate some business model? So we need to partner with local NGOs or international NGOs, that we are becoming part of their program. So the challenge is now to build strategic partnerships and not going now to hop from one to the other. Guy is calling, I want to do another, okay, great, fantastic, we are doing it. No, we need, how to say, a transversal approach. And this is now in educational terms with the international school and on the, let's say, development markets, post-conflict war zones, with another huge NGO we are trying to figure out.
So if I understand it correctly, it's about building a global scale, impacting more people around the world in more countries, including developing countries.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
But by again, by managing the complexity.
Managing complexity.
And not to build another 100 people on the payroll. This will not work. We need to be very, very lean. We have to give we have to go so much space, I think, to people. You know, there was an initiative called the Globalizers. These were social enterprises who were seen as, let's say, enterprises who can reach global scale. Globalizer.
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then we were asked to prepare what is the strategy to reach global scale. And I said, okay, there are 4 or 5 ways to reach global scale. Okay. One is to stop. I'm not kidding. To stop, okay, well, we are out of business. So we do here, of course, we have some responsibilities. We cannot now stop, but we really stop and let it go. Let it go. I think the idea is so strong and was approved in the last 25 years. It will continue. It has not to be necessarily dark in the dark. Maybe it's, I don't know what, talking in the dark or being in the dark or dark and light. I have no idea. It's not about the brand. It means let it go could be one great idea, to give up all the business cases, to give up the business case, and to just let it go. This is one. Secondly, I have to stay modest. Okay, well, that's what we can do, and I think we have to respect, I think, the capabilities and the lifelines of people. These are not robots. They cannot be programmed. People who are working with me are completely value-driven. Sure. And they work, of course, they want to work with me. They don't want to work for a mainstream company, Walmart, and because then they would work next door, would earn double. That means how I respect the values and the capabilities and the interest and the personalities of people who are working with me. And they are not the global, let's say, outreachers and want to go here, want to go there, and jet setting and so on and so on. We have to respect it. That means we respect, I think, the conditions of the team. We want to keep it, and we just do what we can do, but having not anymore a big ambition. This is number 2. Okay. Number 3 is we marry the devil. Who's the devil? It could be Disney, or it could be Blackstone. Okay. A private equity firm. Sure. Why? Because Disney and Blackstone are very, very much, of course, interested in how to say, in edutainment activities. Right. You don't have to have a ridiculous Mickey Mouse. Maybe you can do something more, let's say, socially rooted and more deep. And if now, for instance, Disney would say, well, okay, we have now 50 key locations, and we are setting up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in the key markets. They can do all the market analysis. They know exactly power purchasing, blah, blah, blah. So what can be done, purchasing power, and then we can do it. But then we are, of course, losing our identity, because then we marry the devil, same as Blackstone. So this is tricky. Right. And we are working with investors, and we know how business culture might be influenced, I think, through investors. Yeah. And the money comes in the first place. Motivations will overcome the social motivations. Of course, exactly. So they have to be very, very picky. You have to be very, very, let's say, cautious, not picky, cautious, whether we really would like to marry the devil. Yeah. And number 4 is to team up with a big NGO, UNICEF, for instance. Okay. Yeah, something, a big player, or Save the Children, or World Vision, or whatever. A big player where we have somehow common values, and to team up with them and then to scale. But it means, again, the main question is, do we want to give up our own identity for the greater good? I say yes. People say no. Or do we just respect our limits in terms of capability, in terms of interest, in terms of maybe our life plans?
And number 5?
Number 5 is I have to think about. Yes.
Yeah. So what about impact investment? I was talking to Xin Tsai, one of your franchisees in China. Yes. And she presented a plan that was a very interesting plan, which includes both for-profit and non-for-profit businesses. Yes. And I asked her during the conversation whether there is an opportunity to actually do impact investing with her. And she said, no, I'm not. I got more money than I need. I got all the investors I need at the moment, so I'm not interested. But it seems to me that there's a lot of investors who would be happy with a smaller return, knowing that they're also making an impact in society.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
Yes,
Is that
of course.
something that...
No, not really. I think we are working with impact investors. So we have two investment firms working with us. They invest in us, but first of all, the investment is so low, 250,000 euros, nothing. We need maybe 25 million to really scale up. But again, I think the culture is changing. The culture is very, very dangerous, I think, if money comes in the first place. So if you have 25 million investment, for instance, this is a volume we would need to make really, let's say, a quantum leap. Yeah. Otherwise, we're doing here a little bit and here a little bit, and we can paint the wall, great, fantastic. But it's not giving us really this, how to say, this exposure we are looking for. I mean, clearly, if we are talking about 25 million euro, for instance, or we make an IPO, which can be done, of course, then again, I think I have to respect who are my people, who are my core people. All my people, my core people, I'm working now for 20 years. And they are, of course, they grew, they developed themselves, but I think they are not people who want to work for a stock market company. This is not their way. That's not the reason why they're doing it. And again, when you then scale up, let's say the level of personal engagement is lower. Yeah. You are sitting in your stupid office in a grey suit, and you're looking at the graph and say, oh my goodness, now what's going to happen? And you can do work next door to Walmart or to a bank. It's the same thing. Right. You are completely disconnected. And that means, clearly speaking, it's not the way, and it's a bit bitter because, of course, we are talking all the time in conferences about what is the best scaling strategy, how we can move on, how we can replicate, blah, blah, blah. And there are two stories which are was a really backlash because there was an Indian micro finance fund, SKS, and they went public. And they collected, I think, $300 million, I think, to really for this fund. Okay. And of course, this was a very, very nice guy, Vikramakula, and he started very, very small, and he saw microcredit can leverage a lot in Kazakhstan, in India. And then they went public, big success, fantastic, 300 million were collected, a lot of money, and then he said, wow, now we're gonna fly. But after a while, he was kicked out from the shareholders because he did not perform, let's say, accordingly. So the expectation in terms of money return was much, much higher. So he was pushed, I think, to raise the interest rate and ended up in a situation because then there was no return that the guys, the shareholders, wanted to send people to the villages and want to take out the rings, the golden rings from the lenders. Oh my God. And then, of course, then you understand, wow, on one side you grow, we have a wonderful product, we have a wonderful leader, we have the right intentions, then again, money spoils the world, I have to say, very provocative. Money comes in the first place, and especially when you have such an IPO, suddenly you cannot control it anymore. So you have to be very, 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 very cautious how I'm saying using let's say, the tool of an investment. And again, I think we are talking about social change and want to create somehow a new world. And we cannot copy old economy. We have to find a completely new way. And maybe it's by giving up and not do open source. Maybe Wikipedia, for instance, is a wonderful example. If it would be commercial, it would never fly. Yeah. But by giving it up, then I think, and not to have ownership for your own, and really believing in the idea. Yeah. This could be a case. And then number 5 is, but it's too classical, too boring. So that's a foundation which helps us to have a bigger endowment, and it helps us to operate and to move on, but not being any more commercial. So we are shifting more towards a non-profit organization. So
you described the added complexity, the limited resources, I mean, your own ability to be able to travel to different places, and you have the dual challenge of expanding the markets and going to different new places, and at the same time, 2 more concepts that you have started to develop. How do you balance this new product development with new market development challenges, that both of which require a significant amount of time and work and effort?
You ask me personally or
personally and organizationally? Personally and organizationally.
Personally, well, my definition of social entrepreneurship is very easy. You work more and you earn less. This is how to say commitment you have to give to your own, and you have to appreciate it. You have to love it what you are doing. That means I work never or I work ever. So I have 24/7 in fact, where I'm engaged with what I'm doing. And when I'm in danger to get tired or to be bored or to be, let's say, discouraged, then I can, let's say, swap and can do something different, which gives me new energy. So I'm doing different things because it helps me, in fact, to recharge. That means this is how to say my psycho thing, how I can keep my energy level pretty high. And of course, I have, for me personally, a rewarding system in place which motivates me to do even more. And the rewarding system is definitely I have a chance to meet really, really wonderful people, and I see what I'm doing. This is very concrete. This helps me. Organizationally, of course, it's different because the first generation of my core team were they were like missionaries, you know, they really want to do it, and of course they wanted to work with me because they believed in me and believed in the mission, in the power of the concept. And now second generation is of course different. They have just a day job. They want to work. They want to do for something meaningful. Okay, great. But I think at 5 o'clock or 6, it's over, and it's fair enough. Sure. I think it's fair enough. This is a very ordinary, let's say, issue you might face, especially when you grow. I can only, let's say, grow as my company allows me. So, there was one situation when we were really very close to close the deal with an investor, and I had my 3 core people with me, with them I worked for a long, long time. And I said, listen, now good news, we have now the investors on board. I said, listen, I'm out, I only want to work with you because I'm not working for a third party. And the other person I just said is that it is coming in, I don't want to work with it because it will influence our culture in a bad way. And my wife said clearly, Andreas, you're running so fast, take care when you look back that somebody's behind you. So you have all the time to respect, I think, your followers. And you can only, let's say, do as much as your followers are able and willing to do.
Interesting.
And it means what I want, I'm just good looking. What I want is one thing, but I think really we have to respect all the time what are the readiness for the team, for the core team to really to move on. So that I see my main job in giving, of course, inspirations and motivation, and of course, and to find solutions. But again, it's not allowed to have to hire 20 more people and they will be, how to say, mainstream managers and can do better than the others. It's not about this. You have to be very, very aware about the readiness of your people.
Sure.
This is the only, let's say, an answer I have, and I have to respect them, and even it's very hard for me because things have not enough pace. I want to have it more faster. I want to grow. I have 10,000 days to live. I'm 57 years old now. Life expectancy is now 80 something, so it means 10,000 days roughly, and I need to wrap up. So it means I need to do what I can do now. And that's exactly the challenge I have to face with.
And this leads me to my last question. What is in the future for Dr. Heinecke and the organization, and what kind of legacy you want to leave behind?
Well, on a practical level, I think I prepared everything in legal terms, financial terms, and if I would now fall apart, the company can continue. Well, and I think it's all the time very, very difficult, I think, to predict future. I'm very, very, how to say, I have a deep, deep belief that everything comes in the right place, in the right moment. I have no answer what happens even tomorrow, and I don't care, because I strongly believe that there is a certain order. Even I'm not religious at all, but my life and as experience show me so far, if you plan too much, you might lose maybe your focus. So I really am very curious. I hope I can adapt to myself. I can adapt myself. I can find the people who are following. And if it's tomorrow, it will be over with all the dark in the dark thing. It'll be fair. We'll be okay. You know, I think it'll be okay. There is something much more bigger than yourself. And I strongly believe that everything comes in the right way.
Well, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
Pleasure.
It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.